Hello, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this British Council Youth Connect live event. It's great to see so many participants on the call. My name is Mark Herbert. I'm the British Council's global lead for our work with school education, with non-formal education, and with TVET, and I'll be chairing today's session. I can see from the chat and the Q&A, it's already busy with people saying hello to each other from all over the world. We've got fantastic representation from so many countries I can't count yet, but it's good to see such a variety of attendance. And of course, the subject matter today is around an inclusive vision for leadership. So hearing multiple voices and multiple perspectives is at the heart of our event today. So welcome to you all. Just to set the scene, we know that good leadership has always mattered in our societies, wherever you are in the world. Good leadership has always mattered down through history. But the challenges that we face now in our part of the 21st century are really, unique, and the world is connected in a way that it couldn't be just through technology and by transport in a way that wasn't possible a few decades ago. But of course, we're facing some of the biggest challenges the planet has ever faced around conflict, global challenges like climate change, and economic challenges as well. So leadership in a world that is changing fast is ever more important. And we're focusing today on how leadership plays a role in a more equal and inclusive society. As part of the session today, we'll be unpacking some of the stereotypes about leadership and looking at really what makes leadership inclusive and transformative. We'll also look at how we can grow our leadership skills. So I just saw a note in the chat for colleagues who joined us recently. I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Mark Herbert. I'm the global lead for the British Council, covering our work on school education, TVET, that's technical vocational education and training, and non-formal education. And that includes our Youth Connect work that this webinar forms part of today. Coming back to the topic, I realize that inclusive leadership is a really broad subject. So I'm delighted to have such a range of speakers joining our panel today. And I know from the membership of the participant group today, we've got a whole variety of experience and knowledge, and be looking forward to hearing from you through the questions and comments through the event. We're looking particularly at the dimension of inclusive leadership and gender today. So that's a particular focus within this broad topic. We'll also be hearing personal perspectives from speakers from Myanmar, from Afghanistan, from Egypt, and from here where I am in the UK. And I realize when I'm speaking, I represent, perhaps in the UK at least, a fairly traditional view of leadership. I'm white, I'm male, I've got some grey hair on my head, which is perhaps fairly traditional. But of course, we have the variety from our panelists today. So it'd be good to get different perspectives. And I really hope you do all take part in the Q&A and be active in the comments field. I realise that some of you joining today won't know the British Council and our work, so just going to say a few words of introduction about us as an organisation before we turn to the arrangements for the session today. At the British Council, our role is to build connections, understanding and trust, and ultimately contribute to more peaceful and prosperous societies around the world. And we do that through our work in education, the arts and culture, connecting people, whether they're in school education, in colleges and universities, but also in the wider non-formal field of education, where so much valuable education does take place now, outside the government schools, outside the private schools and education systems that all our countries have. And part of our role is to enable discussions around the world from multiple different perspectives, multiple different countries. And that's why today's event, I'm so delighted to have such a variety of speakers at today's event and such a variety of countries represented in the participant group. Within our non-formal education work, we have a program called Youth Connect, and today's event, this Youth Connect live event, is the first of a new series of events tackling really important global issues, but bringing people together online. from all backgrounds, age groups, organizations. And within that, our work on gender equality and inclusion has always been a really important theme. So hence picking this as the topic for our first event. We'll be looking at inclusive leadership from the experiences of our speakers. So I won't speak for too much longer because you want to hear from them, not me. But thinking about themes of stereotypes, what makes inclusive leadership, and also what are the skills needed to be an inclusive leader. We're really keen to have your feedback as this is the first of this new event series. So towards the end, I'll pause and there'll be a questionnaire in the chat for you to respond to. It'd be good to get your thoughts on what we should be covering in future events, how this particular event went, and so on. So your insight and help will be really helpful for us in future. So thank you to everyone who's taken part in the preparation for this event. Thank you for joining today. I'll now go through a few of the mechanics, the housekeeping for the event. First off, the event is being recorded. Secondly, if you're using social media, feel free to share the content and comments from this event. The hashtags we're using today are hashtag YouthConnect and hashtag YouthConnectLive. And perhaps a colleague of mine could put those in the chat so everyone can see those. There are subtitles available. They're the automatically generated ones, the closed caption subtitles. I know they occasionally make mistakes, so if there is a mistake, I apologize for that, but it is just the quality of the automation. I'm sure it'll get better in the years ahead. You're invited to use the chat box during the event for comments, and also when you hear from our speakers, if you want to ask any questions for the speakers, there's a separate Q&A box. So post your questions in that, and I will pick the questions that seem most appropriate for the panelists and ask them. But also you can upvote a question. So if you see a question or a comment and you think it's particularly important, please give it a vote, and that will guide me towards those questions. Later on in the session, we'll actually disable the question and answer box because we won't have time right at the end for more questions. So we'll just close that when the Q&A session has finished. With any event with a wide range of people attending, we always like to keep an eye on safeguarding issues. So if you have any concerns from a safeguarding perspective, you should have seen the rules when you sort of registered, the code of practice when you registered. But please email any concerns to youthconnect@britishcouncil.org, britishcouncil.org. So this is a space for discussion and debate, and respectful discussion and debate. So please do air your comments and views, but also do so in a way which is respectful for other people's perspectives. One final point, just on privacy, please don't share your personal details, any personal contact details, phone numbers, etc., in the chat. So the format now, we'll be hearing from 3 speakers, our panelists, and then there'll be opportunity for you to ask questions, as I've mentioned. And just to introduce our 5 speakers for today, we have Fatima Khan, who's a consultant from Cine Khan, and I'll give them have more of an introduction when they start speaking. Zora Bahman, who's the country director in Afghanistan for the organization Search for Common Ground. It's actually in Dubai today, but normally based in Kabul. Nadia Alamar, who's the chief executive of the CLAW Social Leadership Organization. So it'd be good to hear from her a bit later. And then 2 younger leaders, youth leaders, Chiyang, who is calling us, based in Myanmar, but actually calling us today from Thailand, and Husam Solan, a youth leader based in Cairo in Egypt. So that's enough from me, long enough introduction. I'm now really delighted to introduce our first speaker, Fatima Khan. So over to you, Fatima. Please could you introduce yourself, share why inclusive leadership is important to you, and then if you could say a bit about, from your research and personal experience, can you share your findings of how stereotypes and power dynamics affect perceptions of leadership? And after that, perhaps a little bit about what makes, in your view, what makes a leader. So over to you, Fatima. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to engage with you today. My name is Fatima Khan. I'm an international development practitioner with a background in economics, political sociology, and geographic information systems. For the past 2 decades, I've worked for international organizations such as the Aga Khan Trust for Culture's Historic Cities program, the World Bank, and more recently, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. My focus has primarily been on heritage preservation, urban redevelopment, and also land administration in South and Central Asia. I've worked mostly on projects in Pakistan, but I also have field experience in Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan. Since 2002, I'm engaged with Fatima Khan Limited as a project manager and research consultant. It's a boutique consultancy that was founded by Fatima Khan 2 years ago, with the aim to contribute to social impact research, creative storytelling, and cultural diplomacy. We focus on developing and conflict-affected states, and we offer cross-sectoral insights to issues of development and humanitarian assistance, SDGs, and leaving no one behind. Some of our thematic priorities include education equity, socioeconomic inclusion, and mapping the dynamics of change within the broader context of multi-sectoral development and humanitarian interventions and their impact. As a research team represented primarily by women of color, inclusive leadership resonates strongly with our own personal experiences and collective aspirations. It is important to us for a number of reasons. We understand that it's premised on valuing diversity, not only in terms of team composition, but also in terms of diversity of opinions and approaches to deliver social impact research. It also means something about fostering and reinforcing mutual respect among team members, empowering each of us to contribute our unique perspectives and strengths to jointly create high-quality work, and it is a process for continuous learning for every team member and supporting each other. In practice, it's important for us as a team to understand that discrimination is a systemic issue, so we work hard to ensure equality of opportunity. At the same time, we must also be aware of our own biases, hence we try to foster a culture of sensitivity. Then there's the question of minimizing the power distance across team members. So from the higher senior management down to junior team members, there's a way of creating authentic forms of collaboration. It's not always easy, but it's something that we strive through all our projects. And empathy is central to having team members that we support and understand to continue on this journey. So in 2023, we conducted a small, not actually a small one, but a What We Know on Women and Girls multi-country research study for the British Council. We looked at 7 countries: Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Vietnam, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Poland. These are vastly different countries with diverse political and economic and social backgrounds. These countries were covered by the British Council's next-gen research publications over 5 years. Our central focus was on women and girls, and we explored the themes of education and skills, and socioeconomic and political empowerment, ending violence against them, and the power of gender norms. We basically want to understand the barriers of and enablers to the empowerment of women and girls in these contexts. So our findings largely resonated with our own personal experiences as women from the global South, where existing gender norms perpetuate certain stereotypes and reinforce uneven power dynamics, and in the process, hinder women from taking leadership roles. From our key informant interviews across the 7 countries, we found that positive stereotypes are mostly associated with male leadership, for example, rationality or logical thinking and assertiveness. Women are by and large viewed as carers, nice to have, but not necessary in decision-making roles, even though they might be working and be economically empowered and working in good organizations. They were also seen to be weak, affecting their ability to make decisions, although that was not the case when we spoke to young people through our interviews and research. So gender norms undermine young women's efforts to decide for themselves, advance their learning trajectories, protect themselves against violence, and at the same time feel socially, economically, and politically empowered. We also conducted in-depth interviews with young women and men aged 18 to 24, where we inquired about perceptions of power. We found that young women stated that power is the ability to lead, be independent, and socially responsible. For them, it's also about self-confidence, self-control, and self-respect, and having a valuable network of connections. Young women also associate their mothers with positions of power within the household. While men of this age also saw power as the ability to lead, in some instances, they associate power with control over and influence on others, including women. For me personally, what makes a good leader? I think from the experiences in the field and all the learning experiences through these different research studies, it's someone who has a willingness and the ability to be at the front of the team, but also stand behind and support them as needed. Anyone who does one or the other is likely to fail as a leader. And depending on the context, it's also important for us to recognize that leadership is manifested in roles we take for granted. For instance, at the micro level of the household, can we not recognize mothers as leaders? Thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That's really, really helpful. There's so much there in a short period as well, you know, around stereotypes, power dynamics, gender norms, and their impact on leadership. I'm sure we'll come back to that. So we've got questions in the chat already. Well, there's lots of comments in the chat. There's lots of questions beginning to come in as well. So participants, please do ask questions if you would like to, and I'll put them to the panel when we've heard from all three of our panelists today. So we'll now move on to our second speaker, Zora Bahman, who, as I said earlier, is country director for Afghanistan for the organization Search for Common Ground. Zora, could you introduce yourself, share why inclusive leadership is important to you, and the specific question which you'll be addressing, but I'll say for everyone, is from your experience, please could you share some of your thoughts on and examples of what actually makes inclusive leadership? What actually makes inclusive leadership? Over to you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and great to be amongst such an interesting group of people. And I'm very excited to share my thoughts with you. As you mentioned, my name is Zora Bahman. I'm the country director for Search for Common Ground in Afghanistan. Search for Common Ground is a peace-building organization, and we work in a wide range of issues and across the globe. And I was reflecting around my own experience as I held different positions that could be described as leading, and what I learned from it. And now that I'm working in this sector for a long time, more than 20 years, what it means to me to ensure inclusive leadership. I started off my work when I was a teenager, like a youth activist, which I assume many of the people participating in this webinar are at the moment. And what I did was looking at the ways girls could have access to education in the 90s in Afghanistan, in my country, and to see how could international organizations continue to provide support to people in my country. And as I was doing that, I was a 16-year-old young woman. My schools were closed, and I was traveling to Pakistan, to the UK, to the US, and in the region to try and find some answers and some support to resolving the issues that children and young people were facing at that time. I very quickly learned that a lot of the times women and young people, and generally people from the global south, are usually engaged in the description of the problems and not necessarily in finding the solutions and leading the solutions. Every time I went and I talked to anyone who held power outside of my country, I was asked to describe the problem. And sometimes I was asked to describe how I felt about it. So if the schools were closed in my country as a young person, how did I feel about it? And how was I suffering? But very rarely, if ever, anybody asked me, how was I part of the solution? What was I going to do about it? And so there was that sense that as a woman, as a person from the global south, I was unable to lead change. And this is a perception that I've seen throughout my career of women, of certain people of certain backgrounds. And as I was working, I could see that this belief towards people is not only a belief held by individuals. It's actually very, it's part of different systems. I had the experience of working in many organizations that actually ensured that this belief was systematically implemented. So in Afghanistan, in the last 20 years, during the Republic government, when women were permitted to work in different organizations, there were a lot of systematic ways in which women were reduced to a certain level of leadership and not being given space to fully lead change and experiment and learn. As I moved on in my career, one thing I realized is that when things get really tough, you need local leadership. You need people who bring in the lived experiences, the passion and the commitment to resolving the problems, to lead solutions and change. And in doing that, when I joined Search, I was very privileged to work for an organization where over 95% of leadership and employees actually come they work in communities where they come from. And this is, I think, one of the major reasons why I am so happy at where I work. And I can see around me that leadership actually works in my organization. I can see that when you provide the opportunity and you facilitate leadership from the local communities, you automatically get access. I have worked in a lot of organizations where people who were supposed to design intervention, who were supposed to bring social change, actually didn't even speak the local language. They didn't have access and they didn't have an understanding of local communities. Whereas at Search, what we do is we put people in leadership positions who have full access, who have a historical understanding and knowledge and experience. So when you ensure inclusive leadership, when you include all the stakeholders, then you ensure that you have access. You also get commitment. Many times every day, I mean, I'm sure you read the news and you watch the news that Afghanistan is going through quite a lot, especially in the last few years. And we have a lot of problems that we need to tackle. And there's a lot of the times every day, me and my colleagues face challenges and we feel like we have to do something. We either have to escape, we've had enough, or we feel disheartened. But then being from those communities, owning those challenges and being committed to solutions, finding solutions to those challenges, make us stay and deliver, even if the economic situation is not that good, even if there are security issues. So that commitment you can find in people who represent a diversity within the communities where you are trying to bring change. And also I found that people who are picked from the communities where they're trying to bring social change are actually solutions focused. In Afghanistan right now, although a lot of negative is being reflected in the media around the closure of schools, limited women's rights, and a lack of democracy and so on. But when I sit and talk to women in my country, I see that there's a lot of focus on the solutions, because women in my country don't only think about their work as work. They see this as their contribution to their wider community. They see it as a contribution to their future, to next generations, and in a social change that they're focused on. So they not only gather data and show the depth of the problems, but they also are very much solution focused, because the better they work, the more change they will bring into their own lives and the lives of their wider family and colleagues. So just to sum it up, throughout my professional career, I've realized that you not only have to create opportunities for local leadership, from within those communities that you're trying to impact, but you also have to know when to take a step back and leave some space for the locals, and for women, for marginalized groups, for youth, and make sure that you ask the right questions, but also engage people in the solutions and allow people to lead their own solutions. And only then they can be committed to whatever change they are trying to make in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a fascinating insight. And I recognize, of course, that the challenges that Afghanistan faces now and has done over recent years have been perhaps more pronounced, more extreme even than many countries around the world. So hearing your comments about leadership and the importance of local leadership and the commitment to solutions is I think both inspiring, hopeful, but also I think really sort of important that what you can do there in Afghanistan can be applied in other countries. It can make a real impact around the world. So thank you. We'll come back to that perhaps during the question and answer session. But we should move on now, and I'd like to introduce our third speaker, Nadia Alamar, who is the Chief Executive of the CLAW Social Leadership Organization. Nadia, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Can you hear me okay? I think everything's fine with my sound. Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation also to be here. What inspiring speakers. It's a little bit difficult to follow them. Such wonderful stories and an impact. And the chat, I just can't start my talk without talking about the chat and the questions that have already been asked by you all. It's wonderful to have all this energy in a webinar, which is, it's really lovely to be part of this. So as Mark said, I am Nadia Alamar, and I'm the Chief Executive of CLAW Social Leadership. I don't have a very long presentation. I just thought it would be helpful to show some words on the screen as I'm talking. I'll talk a little bit about CLAW Social in a second, but just to talk about myself and my passion and interest in inclusive leadership. For me, it is the only way to go. It makes sense on every level, particularly in terms of morals, ethics, and creating solutions for the best of society. We need everyone to be involved in those decisions and those solutions, like Zora said. Lots of parallels with our ethos at CLAW Social Leadership. We believe that everyone should have access to high quality leadership development. This is not just for people in leadership positions or traditional leadership positions. Every single one of us is leading in one way or another. For us, leadership is about exerting influence, and we all have that influence and that possibility to create positive social change. So that's what CLAW Social Leadership is about. We believe wholeheartedly, and every single one of our programs is steeped in inclusive leadership and inclusive leadership approaches. So to talk about, you can see on the screen now, thank you to colleagues at British Council, diverse teams, it just makes sense. It makes sense, like I said, on every level. Diverse teams are 87% better at making decisions than non-diverse teams. And it's important to say here as well that that also takes diversity of thought, which can be developed in people. It's a really important statistic because it goes to show that the importance of inclusive leadership on every single level. And we'll talk a little bit now about what it takes to create or to develop inclusive leaders. It's about valuing diversity, ensuring all voices are heard, and fostering a culture of respect and belonging. That is essential for creating innovative and successful teams. And we've worked at CLAW Social Leadership, we've worked with about 4,000 leaders in the last 15 years and about 3,000 organisations. And we're very proud partners of the British Council on one of their programmes too. So the next slide, please. CLAW Social Leadership. So these are some of our values. Why we exist and why we concentrate on leadership is because it is essential for social change, for positive social change. This is what we believe in. As I said at the beginning, we believe everyone is a leader. Every one of us is a leader and can develop some of those skills and capabilities to make this world a better, more equitable place. Leadership is a lifelong journey. You don't just do one program and that's it. However, you also don't need to do endless programs. There are many ways that we can develop our leadership, including reading, watching, listening to podcasts, and just immersing ourselves in events like this and being around like-minded people. Which brings me to the next stage, which is leaders grow leaders. It doesn't just end with ourselves. We do believe that we each have a responsibility to share that learning and grow others that we work with and work for and lead as well. And next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit about our model and how inclusive leadership fits within that. This model that we have really emphasizes the importance of self-awareness, authenticity, self-care, understanding of one's context, the broader context as well, and collaborating effectively with diverse teams. And this is a model that that forms the basis of every single one of our learning. So by knowing ourselves, we can embrace authenticity, we can prioritize well-being and better understand and respect. And that's a very big word for me, is respect the perspectives and the backgrounds of others. Also, assessing context allows us to adapt our leadership approach to be more inclusive while working effectively with and through others, fosters a culture of collaboration and belonging. So to the next slide, please. Here we talk a little bit about our social capabilities framework. And these are just the main themes that we believe are incredibly important for social leaders to develop. I won't go through each and every one of them. There is a lot to say about each one, and you can probably fill an entire session just concentrating on one. But to really point out the very important ones for us is active listening, empathy, and cultural competence. So inclusive leaders listen to understand different perspectives. They make sure that voices are heard. Secondly, empathy. Leaders who connect with their team build trust and loyalty. They have to understand where people are, the context of the individuals, and they can help and help all employees or all their colleagues or their friends throughout all of these challenging situations that they might go through. And that really does boost overall morale. Thirdly, cultural competence. It can be as simple as leaders who respect and celebrate different cultural backgrounds can enhance the team dynamic, and the community around you. That fosters a more inclusive environment. There are so many other things to say in terms of inclusive leadership and capabilities, such as collaboration, a commitment to social justice, focusing on dismantling hierarchy. This is not about positions within organizations or frameworks, and promoting equality. So it's seeking to challenge those power dynamics, amplify diverse voices for the best for social change. And as mentioned a few times, underpinning all of this is respect. So to the next slide, please. Inclusive leadership. So to be an inclusive leader, you have to seek regular feedback from your team, listen to them, and encourage diverse voices in decision-making. It is vital in today's diverse world. And by embracing inclusivity, I will just read out what's on screen, we create a greater impact and a more harmonious and innovative workplace and environment. So our call to action today is to commit to being inclusive leaders, starting by listening actively, respecting people, showing empathy, and valuing diversity. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nadia. That's great to see, and that's that structure that you've put around the approach there at Claude Leadership is really interesting. And again, maybe we'll come back to that, and I will in fact come back to you a little bit later to say a bit about the opportunity that participants have today to apply to take part in a program. But more of that a little bit later. There have been questions flooding in, and the comments field is full as well. It's been difficult to keep up with. In fact, I've failed to keep up with it. I haven't seen all of them yet, but if I may just ask one initial question to Fatima. So if you could come back on screen, I wondered if you could say a little bit more. So building on what you described earlier on, you say a little bit more about how gender stereotypes and power dynamics are evolving, and I say that from the perspective, at least from my knowledge here in the UK, that there has been a lot of change over the last 50 years around gender politics, roles, stereotypes. It's a journey. I think a lot of people feel it's a journey that's been moving quite slowly, but nevertheless there has been change. And I wondered if you could describe how you see gender stereotypes and power dynamics in relation to leadership evolving in the future, and how that might vary between countries and cultures.
I think it's a tough question to answer, because in all the countries that we were conducting our research, we understand that one of the things that stuck out really is when we try to look at the World Economic Forum's measurements of empowerment. You know, we see female legislators. We interviewed some of the legislators as key informant interviews. And one thing that struck out from examples in Pakistan, for example, was basically saying, yes, we are part of the legislation, but we're not given the voice or the space to create legislation, right? So if you're looking at leadership, for instance, it's not enough to say we have X percentage of women filling X percentage of roles in a certain situation, you know. Being a female prime minister of a country, I know there are a few examples, and there's some examples from countries like in the past in Pakistan, in Bangladesh currently, there's female prime minister. There are other examples of female prime minister. But does that really speak for the vast majority of women in those countries? So that's something we should keep in mind as well in the future in terms of evolution, is we need to be able to broaden, as Zora said, the concept of local leaders. You know, the leaders in every facet of life. We need to be able to appreciate those leaders. We need to be able to celebrate those leaderships. Only then can we build a more inclusive form of leadership going forward. That's my take on it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Can I just, while you're there on camera, can I ask a supplementary question to that? It's based on a comment that was made in the chat I was just reading a moment ago. Somebody asked, this is quite a practical question, that if the leadership in your organization, or the organization the person works in, isn't inclusive enough, what's a constructive way of raising your voice and highlighting how leadership could be different? I realize that's quite context specific, but I wonder if you had any tips from your experience of how to constructively challenge and therefore encourage leadership to be more inclusive in an organization.
Our organization is very small, but we have had experiences in the past of working for other organizations where we thought we would obviously like to replicate the good habits, but also, like I said, understanding our own biases. One of the things we've tried to do is at least create safe spaces that allows, regardless of the position, whether you're a new intern with no prior work experience, but to give everyone the space to say, what do you think about this? And how would you bring your ideas and suggestions into doing something? Having said that, in practice, it's a tricky balance. And sometimes we've encouraged active feedback, like it was pointed out earlier in the presentation. And that helped us to sort of also reflect on how we can do things better the next time. So we do have exit interviews. We do have incoming interviews. We ask people, you know, have you had a look at our profiles? What interests you? What brings you on here? But there's no hard and fast rule as to what can be making it more inclusive. It's really, like you said, context dependent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm conscious that we are quite short of time, so I would like to ask questions of the other panelists. Zora, could I come to you now for a moment? Could you just say a little bit more about what you described as well? So what has led to youth empowerment, empowering younger leaders in the communities that you've worked with, and how have you turned your approach into a practical reality on the ground, and therefore any tips for other organizations or individuals around the world?
I think what has happened quite naturally, and what I've learned from, is taking responsibility and being or not only for oneself, but also for solving the problems around us. I have not actually met an effective leader who has set out to lead, but I've seen many effective leaders who have set out to be impactful and to be the best version of themselves. And I think that's incredibly important. When you find and you invest in people who are committed to bringing positive changes in their community and their field of work, being something very scientific to being something very social, tackling a social problem, you need to find people who have the passion and the integrity. And then you need to give them everything they need to succeed in what they have set out themselves to tackle. But having said that, as we look at ourselves and what is within our control, I think there are two things that are very important when you look at yourself, and you want to see and what you can do, and you want to define yourself as a leader. Number one is to see that agency and that influence. This is something I deal with every day. As an Afghan woman, I open my laptop, my phone, and I see that I am synonymous. My identity is synonymous with being helpless and confined and powerless. So focus on the agency that you have. There's not a single human being in any time in history and anywhere on this earth who is totally powerless. So focus on your power and ensure that others also can see their agency. And this is how you develop yourself and you develop other leaders around you.
Thank you. I think that's a really powerful point about setting out and focusing on those people who want to make an impact, and then supporting them to be leaders. Really, really powerful. And I know there've been comments in the chat thanking you for these comments as we go along. I'm just, again, keeping an eye on time. I may come back round to you, but I also wanted to ask another question. So can the other panelists turn their cameras on, actually, so we can see the whole panel just for a few minutes while we're doing this? And Nadia, if I could put a question to you, please. I think we understand that good leaders are not born. You don't arrive in this world suddenly as a good leader. There are skills that are learned over time and then applied, as we've been hearing. But could you say a little bit more, building on again what you said earlier on, about that journey and how, particularly for young people, we can invest in their skills so they can build their leadership competencies, so they can in turn make impact through their leadership as they go through their careers?
Yeah, great question. It's a very big question.
I know, sorry.
So I will try to be very clear and focused with my answer. And I will revert also back to our leadership development model, because at the very heart of that is self-awareness and understanding oneself, and appreciating oneself, and that as a leader, it takes all of us to be authentic. You don't have to be someone else. So it does take a bit more of a deeper understanding about your values, about your motivations, the change you want to make, why you want to make that change. And so everything for us starts with that. I think the other thing, and you can go through different interventions, different learning activities in order to better understand yourself. It sounds very big and complex. Of course it is, but there can be simple steps to improve that knowledge of oneself bit by bit. The second thing I would say is understanding how you come across to people and understanding other people and how they have an impact on you. And there was such a great question in the chat, which again, I can't answer fully right now. Maybe we'll come back to it. But it's really important to understand where you are aligned with other people, how you react to what they say or how they're acting, why you react in that way. And likewise, if you say something or do something, how they react in a particular way. So it's about understanding the people in the context that you're in and the impact that has on you. Because I could say the same thing to 10 people and 10 people could take that in 10 different ways. And it's just understanding what's at the heart of that message or the heart of that action, and realizing why I react in the way that I do, and being more aware in how I am with other people. And the other thing I would say is some of the biggest outcomes, challenges and then positive outcomes of our programs and of our learning, especially with the younger audience, but also actually with leaders throughout, is two main things. And I would say confidence and communication. And both of those things, there are many more, but if I would just to focus on maybe two of the very important ones, confidence it changes almost everything. And in order to be more, you've got to know yourself, be more comfortable with yourself, your impact on others. That can grow confidence as well as many other interventions. And then how you communicate with others, how you come across is absolutely vital. And both of those things can absolutely be developed from an incredibly young age and then right through to, right through to really older people, because your context is continually changing.
That's really helpful. I'm going to stretch the time a little bit. Just a follow-up question, just on that last point about confidence linked to communication. Could you give any, just one or two practical examples of how younger people can build that confidence? What practical things they do to build that confidence if they don't feel particularly confident in themselves at this stage?
Some of that is about actually acceptance of who you are. A lot of people come onto our programs and feel what we call imposter syndrome. They don't feel as though they are able to be their authentic selves, and just realizing that they can be, and that they're enough, and that their voices, not just that they're enough, they're more than enough, and that their voices are important and should be heard, is incredibly pivotal to development. So how you do that is that exploration of self, and realizing that it's just sometimes reading or listening, watching about what it takes to create social change, and you will find that you are also part of that, and you can be part of that. So practical steps can also be a peer network, learning from each other, coming together with people who share your values, starting maybe in a more comfortable space, starting to share your opinions, starting to talk more, learn more about what you want to change, and hearing other people as well, appreciating their point of view, bringing your input as well. So that peer network is huge. And if I were to say one thing, it would probably be about building that safe space where you feel comfortable in, and sharing your thoughts and opinions, and creating that network of people who can support you as well as you supporting them.
Thanks so much. I'm going to stretch things one little bit further. And Zora, could I come back to you for one quick, and it have to be quick, response to a question that came in, and I don't have the name in front of me, but it was a participant from Nigeria asked how we could extend, I think, some of the effort and the learning from the approach that you've taken there in Afghanistan to other troubled parts of the world. And I think he was, the question was particularly in relation to women leaders.
When we talk to women in Afghanistan, and I think it can apply elsewhere as well, is to focus on resilience. Sometimes we notice that when people cannot go down one path and succeed and lead in that particular path they've chosen, then they get disheartened, and then they give up. So in the last 3 years, I've met many women who wanted to be doctors, young women, but universities closed down for medical, and I mean, most universities closed down for women, but a lot of these women actually switched to other careers. So they showed that resilience, and they could envision a different path and a different future. And I've experienced that myself. So ensuring that whatever you plan and you do, it involves some resilience. The other thing is around being prepared and being humble. Confidence is brilliant, believe in yourself is brilliant. But the minute I feel myself, and I always tell my colleagues and people that I want to develop, is that the minute you're overconfident, the minute when you know that you have the answer, is the minute you've lost your curiosity, you've lost your creativity. You need to always have that butterfly feeling inside you that pushes you to prepare, that pushes you to be a little bit scared and a little bit curious and a little bit worried. And I hope that we all could keep that as we age, and we don't get boring and too confident in ourselves.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Zora. And that's a good point to end this particular part of the session on. Thanks, Zora, Fatima, and Nadia, for all your input. I'm sorry, participants, for not being able to answer all of the questions and comments in the chat. There's just so many, but I hope that we've heard some really valuable insights from our speakers today. So thank you all. We're now going to move on to the next part of the session, and we're going to be hearing from some young people. So there's two particular young people Chiyang and Husam Solan, who I mentioned right at the start of the call. And so firstly, I'll go to Chi, and if you could introduce yourself and your work and share some examples of how you've demonstrated leadership in promoting and ensuring gender equality. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Mingalawa. Good evening, respected chairman, panel members, and young people. My name is Nai. I am from Myanmar. I possess over 10 years of professional experience in the development and humanitarian sector in Myanmar. For the past 5 years, I have served as a program manager for local humanitarian and youth-driven organization, where I have gained my expertise in strategic leadership, organizational governance, and program management. I am also a member of Myanmar Youth Empowerment Network. Our organization mission is for young people to perform trustful and powerful and trustworthy tasks in the sustainable development process. From early 2016 to late 2019, I collaborate closely with women in the Makwe community on the capacity building initiative. This effort aims to empower them to become decision maker, resilient, and independently motivated, both within their households and the broader community. After 2021, the organization focused on humanitarian assistance to the multi-crisis community in Sakai and Makwe in Myanmar. My purpose for attending this event is that I would like to share my experience as a young woman leader in civil society organization and also learn from this event the core practice and ways for gender equality in leadership among young people, especially young women. I will also take away insight and knowledge from this event in order to promote gender equality and inclusive in the leadership position in the community. This event, I would like to share my experience as a young woman leader. At the end of 2022, due to the military junta, our organization had encountered security risks, where the organization, board of directors, and senior management team decided to discuss how to continue humanitarian work despite of the difficulties. As a senior management team member, I have to participate in the contingency planning and discussion. As a program manager with hands-on experience, I have to discuss current free situation and provide strategy to mitigate risk to the board of directors. However, I was concerned about whether they would listen to my opinion regarding the actual situation on the ground. If they believe me, if they disagree with me, which I'm wasting their time. This question were on my mind. On the other hand, I also believe that better decision is made when diverse perspectives are considered. When we are discussing, I noticed that the board of directors and other senior management team members listen carefully, pay mutual respect on my discussion, and we discuss back and forth. They show respect for gender equality by allowing a young woman opinion to be an equal part of the organization. The decision left to wait informed discussion and receptive and positive outcome. In such situation, I realized the significance of achieving gender balance in leadership and decision-making process. I also recognize the importance of ensuring all voices are heard. The discussion and decision may remain village, allowing humanitarian assistance to be carried out safely. I am very satisfied and proud to have participated in those discussions. Last but not least, due to cultural and social norms, we women often hesitate to voice our opinion, make decisions, or take leadership roles. I aim to inspire young women like myself who may sometimes feel reluctant to express our view or to develop the confidence and ability to do so. It is very important to foster an environment that value and assess our ideas and perspectives. At the same time, we must also cultivate education, capacity, and confidence to engage in leadership role. It is also essential for civil society community to recognize the importance of gender equality. Thank you.
Chichi, thank you very much for that. There's a lot in there, and I realize the situation in Myanmar is difficult. Political and security situation in Myanmar is very difficult. So it's inspiring to hear you talking about that, and particularly your point about inspiring young women to express their views and to engage as leaders in civil society organizations in their community. So thank you very much. I will now turn to our next speaker, Husam Solan, who's a youth leader based in Egypt. So over to you to introduce yourself and to say a little bit about your work and how you've demonstrated leadership in promoting and ensuring gender equality.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Husam Solan, and I'm honored to speak with you today about such an important topic, particularly in the context of promoting and ensuring gender equality, and as a consultant at the British Council here in Egypt. I have dedicated my career to advancing social justice and fostering inclusive environments where everyone, regardless his gender or religion, can thrive and contribute to their fullest potential. And before diving into the specific of my work, I'd like to share a bit about my background. I have spent 12 years working in gender equality here in Egypt and Africa, where I have constantly focused on initiatives that promote equity and inclusion. My passion for social justice stems from my personal inspiration and from what I have seen in my local and regional communities, where women and girls are dehumanized and not respected enough. And this has driven me to actively seek out and implement strategies that dismantle systematic barriers and promote equality for all genders. So let me start with two close experiences for me. First one, in my role as core team member at United Nations for Women at regional office as a core team leader. In this experiment, I have spearheaded initiatives aimed to promoting gender equality. One of the most impactful projects I have led is Her Story. Her Story is a youth-led initiative supported by the UN Women Regional Office for the Arab States to produce and disseminate knowledge about gender equality issues and women and girls' lives and their contribution in the Arab. Her Story is about recording the human experience from a feminist perspective, emphasizing the role of women and address the absence and exclusion of women from historical record over centuries that have minimized the role women have played in history, politics, and science, technology, leadership, and even in religion. With a better understanding of the way women and girls live their lives and the specific inequalities and injustice that hold them back every day, communities can better identify the challenges and find solutions to the inequality. Recognizing the contribution of women through history can defy the current stereotype about the women and provide positive role models for the girls and the boys. Firstly, what we did, we launched an educational campaign to raise awareness about gender bias. This included workshops, seminars, and interactive training sessions that encouraged youth to recognize and challenge their own bias. We brought an expert from various fields to speak about the subtitles and of unconscious bias, the historical context of gender inequality, and the practical steps individuals can take to foster a more inclusive environment. By fostering a culture of continuous learning and self-reflection, we empowered our team to become active participants in creating a more equitable environment. Secondly, we built a community of volunteers and gender equality champions that continues to work on enhancing the content of Wikipedia beyond editing marathon events. One significant change we made is that we doubled the articles on Wikipedia in just 3 years. We produced as much as produced in the history of Wikipedia. This have led to increase and enhance the equality of articles about gender and women on Arabic version of Wikipedia. We produced to produce a crowdsourced knowledge and campaigns to promote gender equality. We raise awareness about gender through innovation and advocacy and technology. Also, we build the technological and academic capacity of her story participants, and also to empower young women and men to interact online in a positive manner that can contribute to enhance online discourse and safer online space, particularly for women and girls. It also increased the public awareness on the role of women and their achievement in history and daily life, increased the visibility of the role of women in the Arab states via the creation of a history network between prominent culture and academic institutions across the region. And also we recognize to the officials in our country that the power and influence of youth empowerment and engagement. Second one, I will go quick through it. It's in the British Council here in Egypt, in my role as a program consultant for Active Citizen, which is Active Community for now. Active Citizen is a social leadership training program that promotes intercultural dialogue and community-led social development. Through the program, we bring people together with different beliefs and perspectives to learn from and share with each other. Through working with our partners around the globe, we train participants in the skills and knowledge needed to affect social change in their community. Delivery partners identify facilitators and we train them in the skill they need to deliver the Active Citizen training to others. Following the training, they use the Active Citizen Toolkit to design and deliver the training program to participants in their local communities. Through my role as a program consultant and in coordination with the project manager, I have enhancing the program gender identity. Therefore, I have developed plans to promote gender equality, which are summarized as following. Firstly, we allocated a quota for women and girls, ensuring that they comprise no less than 50% of participants in both cascade and advanced training sessions. Secondly, we ensured that the modification of training toolkit to be more inclusive to gender equality issues and providing opportunities for women. Additionally, we engaged men in promoting gender social issues. Thirdly, we established framework for project within the program, with one of its objectives being to support women and persons with disabilities. Through this simple cost-effective measurements that we are in line with the value of local community. We were able to achieve some remarkable results, such as women were able to occupy 65% of leadership position in social action projects. Also, projects became more attentive to women issues with 100% gender perspective. Women and girls in marginalized and rural communities have become more empowered and confident in themselves, as well as remarkably enhancing their capacities. These initiatives have not only transformed in our community culture, but have also yielded tangible results. We have seen a significant increase in the representation of women in leadership positions, a reduction in the leader-gender gap, and a more inclusive and supportive community for all women. Finally, if there is one piece of advice I could extend to each and every one of you, it would be to actively seek to build the trust with your local community and providing opportunity in a fair way and leveraging the leadership entrusted to you by promote gender equality as much as possible. And please stay away from direct conflict with the community. Even in the most closed off community or societies, there may be an opportunity to advance equality by managing differences rather than conflicting. In conclusion, my work in promoting gender equality has been deeply rewarding and impactful. It has shown me the importance of perseverance, collaboration, and the willingness to challenge the status. I'm proud of the strides we have made, but I also recognize that there's still much work to do in our community. Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward for your discussions and questions. Thank you all.
Sam, thank you so much for that. There's a lot there. You've prompted lots of comments in the chat as well, of course, but it's really, you started with a crystal clear picture about the importance of dismantling systemic barriers and promoting gender equality, and then right the way through. I was interested by your Wikipedia example. I didn't know that, so that's fascinating. But your final points about avoiding conflict, finding collaborative solutions, and involving the local community, working with the local community to move forward, to progress gender equality. So a lot there. I wish we had more time. I'm so sorry that we have to move on to the next session, but thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
No problem. Thanks, Husam. The next part of the format of this afternoon's event, today's event, is to come back to our three panelists and to ask them to very briefly, summarize their thoughts from the event by sharing 2 or 3 practical takeaways on how inclusive leadership can be put into action. So it's a real focus on practical action that people listening today can take forward on their own or in their community group. So I will go in the order that we originally spoke. So we come first to Fatima, then to Zora, and then to Nadia. So Fatima first, just a couple of points from you.
Thanks, Mark. Could you please repeat your question again, please?
Sorry, to repeat the question. So summarizing your thoughts from today's event, and in particular, focusing on 2 or 3 practical steps of how to put inclusive leadership into action.
I think one of the key and foremost things I can think about is to develop the skill of empathy. Someone once told me that it's not something that one is born with, but it's very important to really understand what empathy means and how to practice it. So that's first and foremost. The other is to really recognize that everyone can be a leader. That was my key takeaway from one of our panelists. And also to understand the role of local leaders as creating impact. I think those would be my key takeaways from today's session. And I also understand that it's important not to create conflict or not to, from Soleiman's presentation, to really understand that, yes, there are ways of collaboration if we really want to understand that. And that would be some examples of me in terms of looking at inclusive leadership. just a small takeaway. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fatima. Zora, could I come to you for the same question? I can repeat it if you like.
No, that's fine. So the way you, my main takeaway is that so in yourself, or for me, for myself, I think we need to make sure that we're not focused too much on success as well. I think we're very much focused on success. How can I do this? How can I do that? But I think you learn the most when you accept your failures and your limitations as well, and not get too, you can change course and you can show resilience. So that constant change, and it is encompassed in the way you see self-development, building skills and listening and learning and showing that curiosity. But also, I just want to, as I work in peace building and I deal with conflict, and I think about conflict all the time, I want to invite you as a takeaway from this event to think about conflict, because sometimes it is important to constructively engage in conflict. Conflict is very natural. Conflict could be something very productive and positive. What is not productive and positive is violence. And as peace builders, what we do is to make sure that conflict produces good leaders. Conflict produces social change. Conflict creates breakthroughs. So as you lead, you need to face conflict, and you need to channel it towards positive outcomes.
Thank you. That's a really important point, and maybe a counterpoint or balance to the comment that Sam made as well. Thank you. Nadia, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So I think main takeaways for me, respect, so mutual respect, and something practical. It starts by understanding other people, getting to know people and their challenges, and that also talks to the empathy notion. Also understanding the systemic issues as well as your own personal biases, and there are ways in which we can all be challenged, because we've all got them, like it or not, we have all got them, and in order to move past that, it is good to understand them and then know how we get through that. I do also agree about conflict. I think it's good to face that head on. Depending, the conflict has different levels, but I agree with what Zora has said. And also totally and utterly agree that it takes people with lived experience to be part of the solution and sometimes to lead that solution. But it also takes people with lived experience to educate, share knowledge with everyone else, because it will take everyone as part of a system to try and change that successfully, positively. Those are my key takeaways, I think.
Thanks, Nadia. Fatima, Zora, do you want to add anything else? Any other final comments? Now's your moment.
I think it's been a very informative session for me as well, and to get to sort of get the top level overview, understanding of what leadership or inclusive leadership can be from the closed social leadership panelist. And also, Zora, thank you from your experience in Afghanistan. It's resilience will be something that I would think about for a long time. And also for the young panelists, Chichi and Soleiman, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark.
Great, thank you. In which case, we'll move again on to the next part of the event. We're coming towards the end. We'll be finishing in around 15 minutes' time. I wanted to come back now to Nadia to talk to us briefly about the follow-up opportunity that we have, and the opportunity to apply for Leadership for Gender Equality program.
Yes, thank you for that. So we're very proud partners with the British Council, and we've been working together on a programme for a few years, and it's called Gender for Leadership Equality. And there will be another opportunity later this year to join one of the programmes. So this, as explained, this is a collaboration between Closed Social Leadership and the British Council, and it's open for young people from around the world this autumn. The programme lasts, we're just in the middle of finalising it at the moment, but it'll be about 6 to 8 weeks long, and it gives you access to that peer network from around the world with people who are absolutely invested in inclusive leadership, gender equality, and social change. The program itself is divided into 4 different modules, and each module concentrates on a core aspect of social leadership. There will also be live classrooms that you can join, obviously online. But apart from those online sessions, all the work can be done at your own pace in your own time. So we only ask that you join the sessions, but apart from that, there is flexibility around when you do the work. With all of our programs, there is no right or wrong answers when you do your reflections. We just ask you to be as open and honest with yourselves as possible. What we always say is what you reap, what you get out of the program is what you put in. So the more effort you put in, the more open you are, the more you will get out of the program. And I've really got to say we've had some wonderful feedback from our program so far. It's been delivered in various different regions around the world. In particular, people have talked about their no longer feeling alone with the work that they're doing. They no longer feel isolated or alone with the thoughts that they have about inclusive leadership and the change they want to make. Their skills have been increased in inclusive leadership. They understand it more from other people's points of view as well. And they have increased confidence in the ability to work with others and have conversations with others and share their voice as well. So more information will be shared by British Council, and we're very excited for this opportunity and welcome you to take a look and apply if you're interested. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that summary, and I hope that that will pique a lot of people's interest and we'll get those applications. I look forward to hearing from a lot of you to follow up. But have a read, find out more, and then if you're inspired, and I hope you will be, please do apply. We're now at the stage of the event where, as I mentioned right at the start, it will be good to get your comments and feedback on this, the first of our Youth Connect live events. So there will be, and I hope this will appear in the chat, a link to a questionnaire to allow you to comment. So is that going to appear? It has. There we go. There's a little link in the chat there. If you go to the chat and take a look at that, you can just now give your view. So if you just click on that, and I'm just going to pause and just give some silence to allow you to complete the questionnaire. I hope it's there. I can't quite see it myself, but I hope it's there. If you could click on the link and start to fill that in, I'll only pause for 30 seconds and then let you fill that out in afterwards. As some of you have asked in the chat, they've asked about how you can express interest in the leadership program. It is within the link. So if you can express interest in the training via the link. That's just been reposted now by Emily Reynolds. I know some of you are having some difficulties with the link. Okay, some people seem to be having a problem with the link. We'll send it afterwards to make sure that's available to everybody. I'm sorry that we've just got a technical problem with that. So I'll bring the session to a close. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate the level of participation from around the world, the level of activity in the Q&A and also the chat. I know so many of you posted comments, and I'm sorry we haven't been able to discuss some of those because there's some really rich and varied comments and observations that have, I think, enhanced the program. So in addition to our speakers, I hope you've also been having a chance to skim through those comments and see the insights that are coming from people all over the world. So thank you to all of our speakers, all of our participants. Thank you for those of you who are active citizens, alumni. Many of you I know a number of you have taken part in that program over the years. It's great to see you on the call today. And as you probably realize, or you may not realize, that the Youth Connect program that this event is part of is the successor to Active Citizens. So the Youth Connect program follows on from Active Citizens. So it's great to see so many of you connecting again from the Active Citizens group. The next event will be in the Northern Hemisphere autumn, so October, November time. We haven't fixed a date yet. The theme will be related to gender and climate. So we'll be coming to that theme. Another gender dimension, still very important, but we'll be looking at it through the perspective and the link to climate change. So do please join that when it's advertised. Do register for it. The recording for this whole event will be available on the Youth Connect's webpage. You can take a look at that and look at some of the other aspects of the British Council's work with non-formal education under the Youth Connect programme. I know some people had issues with the link for the feedback questionnaire. So when that comes through to you, if you hadn't been able to access it right now, please do take just a couple of minutes. It's very, very brief. Do give us your feedback, because what you say will shape how we take forward Youth Connect's programme of live events. So thank you to our speakers, and it's really great to have such a diverse set of voices here today, and a group that I think has been inspiring, thought-provoking, motivating. So thank you to Fatima, to Zora, to Nadia, to Chichi, and to Husam. Thank you all for your time, participation, and I look forward to seeing all of you at the next call in a few months' time. And let's all continue to work together for a more equitable, peaceful world. Thank you. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.